Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to connect with all of you tonight. So we have 40 people in the house. Let's see what happens here. I wanted to break the ice because I haven't been online in like 8 days or so. So I thought, let me go live, but I haven't really prepared anything. I just wanted to call it, I wanted to title this video Guardians of the Galaxy. I got a gist of a download, like a tiny gist of what we're going to be talking about tonight, but I'm just going to roll with the punches here and see what happens. I'm really on here because I felt the pull, and I do my best to not think about going live because then I get overwhelmed and flooded with information. So I usually just keep my guides at bay for a while. I just block them out and I'm like, don't talk to me. Like, I just want to go on live and then we'll take it from there. Because if I start thinking about what I'm going to talk about, it's not even think about. When I start to receive that influx of energy, it's like one door that leads to another door that leads to another door, and before you know it, I have four doors at the same time, and all this, I'm getting barraged with information left and right. So I'd rather just block them out. And now I open the floodgate. All right, so I guess we will begin. Maybe give it one more minute. I'm really happy to see you guys, though. I had a good time in Montana. I'm very glad to be back, but it was really great. I enjoyed my trip a lot. Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate that. All right, so I want to discuss tonight how there are different measures or different degrees of consciousness. So this video is going to be a little fringy, and I thought about doing a presidential debate video. I'm like, I'm not in the mood right now because that's a lot of energy coming at you. And so we're going to keep it on the fringe tonight. I came up with a little cute slogan, the dot slogan tonight. I was like, feel good, dotting your eyes, because I'm Mr. Dot, be a dot, dotting your eyes and spilling the tea, and spilling the spiritual tea. So rather than crossing your T's and dotting your eyes and spilling the tea. All right. When you start working with your psychic abilities, it's never cut and dry. It's always highly nuanced, especially when you start to move into the higher echelons of infinite consciousness. So think of it like this. The more that you move up, you spiral your way up, the less polarity and duality there is, okay? So you start to move into a neutral state. When you reach the top of that summit, then there's nothing. So let me give you an example. What I mean by nothing is it's the 0 point field. So you're aware of everything, but you act on nothing. So based on that, it's very difficult for you to have a physical, human, embodied experience. Let me give you an example of this. Say that, and I'll use an example that happened to me recently, like in the last 2-3 days. I was with a friend and I noticed that this friend was very sharp, very judgy with other people, but also had a lot of anger bottled in. So they would say things like bastards. Like, let's say we were parking the car. This friend was like, those bastards better close their doors. And they were serious. It's not like, you know how different words carry a different frequency? Like you can use the B word, but it can be playful or it can be like you truly mean it and you're being insolent. words carry frequency. So I never look at words as energy. I do. I think of words as like our human body. It carries our soul. So words carry frequency, and words are like a diamond, and it has different facets, and it's all open to interpretation. If I'm being funny, if I'm being playful, if I'm being cheeky, and I use the word bitch, for instance, and I'm just, shut up, bitch, right? It carries a different frequency than if I'm like, you better shut up, bitch, and I'm serious, right? I can't take myself seriously. But words carry frequency. So I see them as like a baggie, and within that baggie is a different code or a different energy. So this friend was being dead serious. He was calling people bastards. He even went as far as saying, I really want people to die. I want the population to die off through this COVID because humans are stupid. Things like that. So when you're in that 0 point field, for now, just for this presentation, I want you to think of the 0 point field as the highest level that you can achieve, meaning there is no polarity, none. The only polarity there is the polarity that you're presented with in your reality. So for instance, I was with this friend, they were saying all these things, but when you're in that space of unconditional love and neutrality, you don't judge them for saying it. You just don't. You are able to hold them. You're able to hold all of those aspects, to cradle those aspects without trying to repress the expression of what it is that they want to express. Does that make sense? So you're neutral. You're observing everything, but you're so in love with unconditionality, you're so neutral that there isn't any part of you that condemns other people for having their experience. All right? That doesn't mean that polarity isn't appearing, it's still appearing, but you can hold it all. All right? There's a saying in the movie Spider-Man that goes, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's what I want to touch on tonight. When you start to climb the rungs of the ladder of infinite consciousness, you are given more and more and more responsibility. So even if someone's being completely out of line, you're in this neutral zone, this judgment-free zone. And when you're in that zone, you don't say things like, hey, that's not really kind. You don't try to correct people. So you're at a very high level where duality is observed, but isn't acted upon. Okay? When you step down a little bit, and you can understand why we tend to step down to have more of an individualized experience where we have opinions, where we have beliefs, where we get to have a subjective experience. But when you're all the way up there, and I'm just using up there because it makes sense, think of a spiral and you have all of these different left and right hemispheres. And as you move up, the spiral gets smaller and smaller and there's less polarity. And then eventually you hit that point where it's completely, utterly neutral. All right? So what happens is when you say nothing, you may not help enlighten your friend, like you may not be drawing their attention to something that they need to correct. But from that vantage point, you don't see it as they need to correct it because you already understand that they have to go through the respective journey without you discriminating against them. So you already understand that. Now, if you start to share your opinions and you start to be playful or whatever, and they shut you down, right, then it's a double standard. So it's at that point that you would say something like, hey, like I never judge you for anything that you say. All I ask is for the same respect. Most people don't have the capacity, like their consciousness is shrink down. So as soon as they hear something that they don't like, they will try to cast a stone at you but they don't realize that you've been holding a space for them this whole time. Okay? They don't realize that. But because you've been holding that space for them for a long time, the likelihood of you getting reactive when they then judge you for having an opinion, the likelihood of you getting reactive is slim to none because you've been able to maintain that vibration of neutrality, and your heart is wide open. Okay? So it's at that point that you would want to say to them, hey, there's many things that you say sometimes that I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't judge you for it because I love you unconditionally. So when it's my turn to speak, or it's my turn to have an expression, I just ask that you hold the same amount of space for me. Sometimes that'll go over their head. They won't understand it because they're so oblivious to their own unconscious patterning. They're so oblivious, right? And some of those people would like it even more if you did put them in their place, because sometimes they're addicted to drama. People who are addicted to drama feel a need to call people bastards or to say, I want the population to die off through quarantine. They need to do that because they're munching on lower vibrational energy, right? Now, every case that you encounter is going to vary. It's going to vary. So I'll give you another example of your psychic abilities and how it always changes from case to case. So if a friend of yours happens to be a psychic and they say to you, I did a reading for this celebrity, and they actually name drop, would that be a guardian of the galaxy? Would that be the mentality of a guardian of the galaxy? Meaning, would they be operating from that higher octave where they're able to hold all of these aspects without trying to convert them, without trying to change them, without trying to correct them, without trying to thrust upon them their views of reality? If the psychic said to you, I did a reading for Beyonce, or I did a reading for I don't know, Dr. Phil, would that be something that is highest aligned? No. But here's where it gets really nuanced. Okay, and I want you to follow this video because it's not so much about the words here. I want you to understand the diamond that I referred to at the beginning of the video. It's a diamond with many facets, and those facets, they can change depending on the circumstances that you're in, or the situation that you're in, or the understandings that you have with other people. So for instance, let's say that the psychic name dropped. And that's happened to me. I've had friends say, I've done a reading for this person or that person. Right away, my guardian of the galaxy, this is why I titled the video Guardian of the Galaxy, my guardian of the galaxy jumped online, and I knew that is not highest aligned. But then in order to be really psychic, you have to go, but what if the celebrity knows that they're going to tell me? What if the celebrity is open about doing a session with this person? Then would it be out of line? No, it wouldn't be, because there's a consent there. There's a consent. Now, in that moment, the only way that I can find out is to ask. The only way that I can find out is to ask. But this is where it gets really fascinating. If I have a friend who's a psychic, who's highly evolved, and they tell me who they've worked with, I will right away be able to decipher if that celebrity gave them clearance to say their name or not. If they haven't, I will know, am I supposed to say something, or is my friend conscious enough that if I go silent, right, and I don't interject myself, will they have the recognition or the realization in the future to realize that that was not cool, all right, that they crossed a line? So going back to my first example with my friend who was calling people names and then took it out on me when I started getting funny about something. When you don't say anything, because those people are addicted to drama and you're holding a higher frequency, that higher frequency can sometimes act as a catalyst because it's a more potent frequency. It's a more potent frequency, but it's a silent frequency. So that higher frequency can act as a catalyst and then ensue or result as a problem. So that same afternoon, my friend blasted me because I had an opinion about something, and it's because I had been holding a higher space for a long time. So sometimes people are not going to be able to contain themselves because you're holding such a high frequency that's non-judgmental, and if they're addicted to judgment and to drama, they're going to stir up the pot on purpose. They're going to start to push your buttons and stuff like that. But anyways, my point tonight is, if you want to become highly, highly attuned psychically, and this is so important, because as you awaken, you are going to be initiated into higher octaves of your psychic consciousness. There are many levels, many, many levels. For instance, tonight I received an email from someone saying, I loved your Vimeo, your last Vimeo reading. At first I was like, oh, I want to screenshot this and share it on my stories and erase the name. And it's like, no, because it's an email and it's personal. It's a personal email. So am I fragmented for having the initial thought of, I wish I could screenshot that? No, because what happens is you become the diamond. And you're holding so many dimensions at the same time, concurrently, that you receive all the downloads from all the dimensions at the same time. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you guys. So this is how you're able to dissect all the little nuances, all the little details that pertain to multidimensional awareness. Okay, so for instance, you have this friend who name drops, hey, I did a session for Beyonce, or I did a reading for whoever. Is that okay? No. But it might be, because Beyonce might know, and I'm just using the name Beyonce. It's not about Beyonce. But Beyonce might know, so she doesn't care. And then there are people who do readings that want to keep it under wraps, like they want to keep it secretive. And then there are people who do readings who see it as a massage, like, oh, I got a reading with Phil, it was great. But they're not really in that world, or maybe they don't have shame, or maybe they just see it as like a massage. So they don't see it as a big deal. But what I've learned is it is not our job to justify it in our mind. Our job is to always be in the clear. And if you're not in the clear, then you're overstepping a boundary, which is another way of saying you are not holding and guarding that aspect, meaning you would not be holding that celebrity in protection. You would not be shrouding them in protection, because you use their name to strike up a conversation with someone, or you used a name to impress someone. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. So the way that it works is, the more that you elevate, the more responsibility you are given. The more responsibility you are given. What we want to do is we want to aspire to become the guardians of the galaxy. What does this mean? It means that you are protecting every single person in the world, every single aspect of every person in the world, and then you check in with them to see what you can share and what you can't share, right? That's why when I do readings with people, I say, hey, do I have your permission to go all the way? They're like, yeah, you know what I mean? If I did a reading on Trump right now, or if I did a reading on Biden right now, I would be able to know through my psychic abilities how far I can go. But when you spiral into the higher octaves, I am one with Trump, I am one with Biden, I am one with you, right? And we all know each other when we become one again, when we coalesce into the soup of oneness, we all know each other. So you start to get attuned to that zone of neutrality, which is the oneness frequency, which is the home frequency, where everyone is you and you are everyone. And at a soul level, you comprehend what it is that they need to go through without giving your 2 cents, and what you can share to get them back on track. All right? I hope this makes sense to you guys. Let me know if it does. Okay. So one thing I want to share though is when someone has, okay, do guides have opinions? Yes, they do. Because it depends which guides you're working with. There are guides who are 100% neutral, 100%. I actually work with a collective of beings. You can call them the game makers, like they made this game, this reality. They have zero emotions, zero. Or it's not that they made this reality, is that they see it from the vantage point of this is a game and what do you need to do to liberate your soul? It's not personal. It's just a game. So there's a group of beings that I work with, and they've probably been the most helpful guides for me because they don't beat around the bush with me. They tell it like it is. There's zero emotions though, right? Whereas there are some guides who have been humans, like a lot of the Ascended Masters have been humans, so they have more compassion sometimes. Like they know how to bridge. And then there are guides who just tell it like it is. And those are the guides that I work with the most because they're unbiased. They can come across cold at times, but they never lie. Like it's always true. They would say something like, "You're playing the victim right now," or like if you're in a toxic relationship or at a toxic job, they would say something like, "But you're choosing to be there." Right? So they don't beat around the bush, and I like working with those guides because they're a great reflective component of who we are. Those are the guides I probably work with the most. But there was a point to this. What was I talking about? I was saying that, okay, yes, some guides have opinions. So for instance, I had a friend years ago, and we were really, really close, like brothers. And he was addicted to posting selfies like butt naked all the time. It wasn't like a once in a while selfie where he's celebrating himself and his body. It was like a daily thing, like I need my dopamine hit. And anything you've been doing for years, I'm talking 20 years or 15 years, and you don't outgrow that stage, it probably indicates that you're not evolving or you're not really on course with what your guides have in store for you. So you're not actualizing your divine potential. And we were really, really, really brotherly. And I sat him down one time and I'm like, "Yo, bro, you know I love you. You know I'm all about you, celebrating your body." And he tended to be promiscuous, like sexually, but he owned it. And I like that. Like when you own who you are, I'm like, I celebrate you because you own it. You love sex. You love to be promiscuous. So you own it. He kind of had like a Greek vibe, those people who are like really like free and with their sexuality and all that. But I said to him, I'm like, I really feel like you're stuck in a loop and there's so much more in store for you, but you're too addicted to the dopamine. And that was a message from his guides. It was clear as day, clear as day. And I told him that, and a month later, he was like, "Phil, I don't know what I've been doing with my life. You're totally right. You called me out. I can't believe I've been doing this." And then shortly after that, he went back to his old ways. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. Because as a guardian of the galaxy, you sometimes have a duty to help people remember, like, hey, I think you've plateaued. I think you've plateaued, and it's time for you to kind of move past that plateau or to bust through that glass ceiling. So we do have a responsibility as guardians of the galaxy to keep each other in check. But again, it's always going to vary from case to case to case. But the main message I wanted to draw tonight, or I wanted to draw your attention to tonight, is we are here to protect each other. All of us. All of us. And there's been times where people thought I got defensive on my social media, or you might look at someone's social media and think that they're getting defensive. It's not what it is. What it is that we want to be supported and uplifted, right? And when someone tries to deliberately hurt you, you have to, as a guardian of the galaxy, say you're not welcome through these gates, because this is all love. So think of it like the vision I'm getting right now. The guardian of the galaxy will have spiraled their way through their initiation phases all the way to the top. So they understand every single layer, every single point within that spiral. And then they become the guardian of the galaxy, and they stand in front of every point that they've transcended, meaning every person, every aspect that they've transcended. And then if someone tries to hurt those aspects, they will stand up to them. But then sometimes they'll be told not to stand up to them, because then they have to be a guardian for that person and create space for them to find themselves. So it's very convoluted, it's very complicated, and it's never going to be the same. Let me just charge my laptop. All right. Okay, I think I've talked enough about that. And then I'm going to share one more thing that I feel pertains to this whole Guardian of the Galaxy thing. The higher you go, think of your mind as an elevator, all right? The higher you go, oh wait, this thing isn't charging. Okay, all right. The higher you go, your mind is like an elevator, so the more you can see, all right? So you're going up the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor. You're not trying to bypass. You're really taking your time on every floor. And then sometimes you drop down to the third floor on purpose from the fifth floor, and then you go back up to the seventh floor, and then you drop all the way down to the first floor. There's a reason why we have to bebop around, okay? There's a reason why we have to bebop around. It's because we need to kind of break all the walls of the paradigms that are limiting. So for instance, let's say that you're in a relationship where you feel you can't voice your opinion because your boyfriend or your girlfriend are going to turn it on you, or they're going to shut you down. When you're in that disempowered state of being afraid of how they're going to respond to you, you might kind of recoil and crawl back into your shell because you're afraid of them. And then you may have to go through a phase where, rather than seeking their approval, you're going to have to learn how to not share what you want to share, because you're neutralizing that energy that was within you, that fear, that shame, that blame that was within you, that disempowerment. So we have to go through a phase where we're silent to empower ourselves again. And once you alchemize that energy that kept you in that disempowerment, then you start to rise into empowerment. Once you're fully empowered and you don't have an attachment, you don't have any psychic cords to people, then you'll go back and share exactly what you wanted to share with your boyfriend, but you won't allow them to dictate the outcome because you know where you stand. So that's what I mean. You'll find that on this awakening path, you go up, you transcend the lesson, and then you go back down and readdress it. But now you're like the guardian. You're holding the perspective while you talk about it. And the three words that are coming to me now is, we are the ancient ones. We are the ones who came back into this time-space continuum to talk about any and everything while cradling these aspects. So as we talk about things that are uncomfortable, we are actually alchemizing them. So let's say that I decide to, address you about something that's really uncomfortable. All right? It may not be uncomfortable for you, but it's a hard topic. If you and I are able to hold a space for the topic, we are bringing to the surface all these old Akashic energies, and in real time, rather than throwing them in a box, right, we're allowing them to express, and by allowing them to express, we are alchemizing them. So we are the ancient ones. We are here to hold all of these aspects that have been long repressed, suppressed, and oppressed, to not be afraid to stir up the pot of trauma and drama. And as we speak, we can see these little beings, which are these energies or these thought forms, start to take on a new shape and a new form. They start to mutate because they're like, oh my God, these ancient ones are allowing us to express our anger. These ancient ones are allowing us to express our sadness. The ancient ones are allowing us to channel through them, and they're not trying to throw us in a box. That's our work here. This is like, I'm talking about, this is going to be the next phase of our evolution, but I'm prepping you guys now. All right. And I find that lately we need to express everything that's on our heart to assess where people are. All right. So don't shy away from talking about certain things. Don't shy away from it. Thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. Don't shy away from talking about subjects that are uncomfortable, because we are here to be at the highest penthouse of this vibrational building, and to put all these aspects in an elevator and bring them all the way up to the penthouse so we can have a cocktail with them and say you're a part of us. But see, what happens with a lot of people is that they keep shoving those aspects down in the basement of that building. So you can say that they have demons, or you could say that that person is the demon and they're holding those aspects hostage that really just want to break free. So there's two ways to look at it. You can say that people have demons, all right, and those demons are governing them. Or you could say that that person is the demon and they're holding aspects captive because they don't want to set them free, because if they set them free, they're not going to have any food to ingest. They're not going to have any food to eat. So there's different ways to look at this, different ways. Or you can say that neither of them are demons, but that there's a mutual contractual agreement that the thought forms, which might have been people in other lifetimes, and that person have to learn how to bring love to each other. And until that contract is complete, they will remain a match to each other. I know this is really quantum, but it's really imperative that we start speaking up. Okay, and again, there's a difference between speaking up from a disempowered state. Because if you speak from a disempowered state, you're going to get the vibrational match to that. Okay, so let's say you're always complaining. You're probably going to get the vibrational response of just shut up and be happy already, because you're not aligning with conscious people, because you've been complaining for a long time. And by complaining for many years, you've attracted a certain group of people who hold a similar consciousness as you. So they're probably going to shut you down, right? And then you may come across someone who doesn't shut you down, and you're like, ah, like that heavenly sound, like the harp, ah. And that person will tell you there's nothing wrong with you, like you're beautiful, it's okay, get it out, get everything out, we got this, we're alchemizing it, we're transmuting it. So you might have to have that moment, you see what I mean? But when you speak from a place of empowerment, then it's easy to tell when someone is overly tethered to their beliefs, and if that person has a lot of limitations. That's why I always encourage my clients, like, if you go out on a date with someone, from the get-go, out the gate, be yourself. Be yourself. Because if you bring up something that's uncomfortable for them and they're not able to rise up to the challenge, to champion the cause, then that usually denotes that there will be problems in your future because they have a limited capacity. So you don't want to cancel them per se. It's not about canceling people. You just want to kind of hold a space for them while honoring what you want in your life right now. That's all, right? So it doesn't matter what a friend does to me, or, well, it does matter. But I'm saying with this example with my friend who got really mad at me when I said that I would, I won't get into it, but they got really mad at me for having my own opinion, which I have a right to. Now I know that I can't necessarily broach those subjects anymore. Like, I know that now. It doesn't mean I'm going to love them any less. It just means that I don't want to tiptoe around them. So I'm just going to keep it real shallow, and that's it. That's it. I don't have to see them every day. I don't have to see them all the time, but I know where we stand now. And my door is always open if they decide to accept me for my own views. So I know I went all over the place in this video, but my main message to you tonight is the higher you climb, the more readily you will be able to manifest, but also receive information from your guides. Because now you're not receiving information from the 4th floor and below. You're receiving information from any floor you want. You can look at the dark aspects. You can look at the sub-dark aspects. You can look at the light aspects. You have access to all of this dimensional information. So my message for you tonight is try to pinpoint what it is that you do in your life, that keeps you in a state of separation because you're not protecting certain aspects of other people that are really just aspects of you. They're really just aspects of you. What? Sorry, my light. Hold on. One second. Okay. So it gets really tricky because if you never say anything, then nothing happens, which is why we're in this human form. So let's say you say to me, Phil, I worked with Bryan Adams, or I worked with Britney Spears. If I never say anything, that's okay. But nothing ever happens. So now multiply that by 100, nothing at all happens if no one says anything. Does that make sense? So if no one says anything, then we're just part of the soup of one, but we're not having a individualized experience. So what we do is we go, well, let me play with the Arcturians, let me play with the Pleiadians, let me play with all of it. Let me play with all of these different aspects that are their own, that have a signature and have an experience, a full-bodied experience on this planet. And that's why this planet is such a gift to us, because we have access to every single dimension. Every single emotion that you have links to a frequency. Every frequency links to a dimension. It's amazing. So planet Earth is like a melting pot of infinite consciousness. So pay attention to what you do in your life that doesn't protect other people, and then try to rectify that, meaning try to work on going silent for a while. And every time you have the urge to say something, instead try to alchemize that energy. Because by talking about it, you're actually shoving down your aspects. It's hard to explain. Okay, when someone wants to argue with you, it means that they're still avoiding what they need to learn. They're still avoiding their lessons. So by arguing with you, they're getting caught in their shadow. Okay, they're getting caught in their shadow, and they act and become the shadow rather than addressing their shadow and giving love to their shadow. So by arguing with you, they perpetuate their state of consciousness because they're not shifting up the pattern. And by not shifting up the pattern, they remain in this vicious cycle, and they're still escaping a deeper lesson. All right? Think of someone who's bulimic. They don't want to eat. They don't want to heal themselves. So they keep themselves in that vicious cycle of throwing up their food because they don't want to address the deeper lesson as to why they're here. All right. So from that perspective, they're shoving down an aspect of themselves that actually wants to be liberated. And they're shoving that aspect down in the basement and they're saying, you're not allowed to leave my system. I refuse to change. So they're holding prisoner these different aspects of themselves. So whenever you have people in your life who polarize and want to argue with you all the time, that means that they have a limited capacity, which means that they have aspects of themselves that they don't want to address and they don't want to heal. So by arguing with you, it acts as a distraction or another reason to justify why they're a victim or to justify why they're right. But it doesn't actually evolve them. It's kind of like going back to the example of my friend who constantly posts selfies naked. It's not helping him. It keeps him in a loop, right? But from the 0-point field, I wouldn't say that. But from his guide's perspective, your guides are here to keep you on mission, you guys. By the way, that's why sometimes they tell it like it is. We all have a mission that was predestined, all of us. So from the guide's perspective, they would want him to stop doing that to alchemize whatever needs to be alchemized, rather than try to outrun or escape a deeper, grander lesson. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. One more thing I want to share. When you become guardian of the galaxy, okay, and you have full access to all of the dimensions, you won't have to try to manifest anymore. You won't have to try to manifest anymore, because by holding all of these aspects, by being a holder of all these frequency domains or all these dimensions, you're already by default holding all this light. It's a service not only to humanity, it's a service to the entire cosmos. So by default, the cosmos is going to shower you with blessings upon blessings upon blessings. You never think about money anymore. You never think about what's next anymore. And the other day I got this really cool download from the guides. And I know this is such a random video, like we've kind of gone on a crazy ride, but I guess this is what it was meant to be. The other day, the guide said to me, when you are insistent upon an outcome, you are being resistant to what is meant to come. So when you are insistent upon an outcome, I think they said, when you are insistent upon a specified outcome, you are being resistant to what's actually meant to come. So that's another good example. If you get fixated on one outcome in physical form, whether it be a twin flame, a person, a job, a situation, a dream that you have, if you get too fixated on one outcome, that lets you know that you've already cut yourself off from that multidimensional consciousness. You've cut yourself off from that full access, because if you had full access and you were holding all these aspects, you wouldn't concern yourself with one outcome. So that would be akin to you breathing down the neck, follow this, breathing down the neck of an aspect that you're being insistent upon, and that aspect feels like smothered by you, right? Think of how someone feels when you're constantly meddling in their business, when you're constantly sticking your nose in their business. Think of how someone feels when you're always like nagging them. Oh, why didn't you do your laundry? Why didn't you do this? Or, hey, when are you going to come get me? They feel suffocated by you. So they start pulling away. Why? Because you're fixating on them, right? You fixating on them is demonstrative of the fact that you're not in alignment, because when you're in harmonic alignment, you have access to the entire universe. So you're in a disempowered state, essentially, right? Think about it. If you're cut off from the full spectrum of the light that you are, of that soup of oneness, if you're cut off, then you're operating linearly, which is why you're fixated on the future, on that one specified outcome. And what is that outcome going to feel like? It's going to feel like you are so smothering and you are so suffocating. So it's going to say, get off me. That's why a lot of what you want to see manifest doesn't manifest. Because you're so gung-ho on making that one thing happen that it feels like it's being choked and strangled. And it's not going to happen because your guides are like, yo, you're too fixated on this. We need to bring you back. You've gotten disconnected from that full vibrational range. We need to bring you back home. So a lot of people don't always understand why what they're wanting to materialize doesn't materialize. The reason is because they're focusing on the physical form. And when you become a guardian of the galaxy and you're on that penthouse, it's all energy now. So you don't really care about the physical form that it takes because you're always provided for tenfold, triplefold, 100-fold. You know that you get the best of the best of the best because as a guardian of the galaxy, you're protecting every person, every aspect in this universe. What happens when you give to people? They always give back to you, right? You don't give to get back, but what happens naturally when you give to people? You try it. Go buy people gift cards tomorrow, send them out. What's going to happen? They're going to feel acknowledged, and that's all a soul wants. That's all these aspects that we keep shoving down in the basement want. They want to feel acknowledged and seen by you. And when you post the naked selfies like my friend all the time, you're not seeing them. You're only seeing yourself. So it's self-absorbed. You're not being of service to others, meaning to those other aspects of yourself that actually want to get the spotlight for once. It's all about you, right? What happens when you name drop who you did a reading for? Are you protecting that artist? Are you protecting that actor? No, you're not. Unless they give you the green light, then that's a different story. So why are you doing it? Because you want that validation. So when you want that validation, then it means that you're cut off from the entirety of who you are. And when you're cut off from the entirety of who you are, then you get fixated on those outcomes and you need more of these solidified people and things to validate you because that's where you're at. So a lot of times when you're obsessed over one thing or two things or three things, it's not going to happen because your spirit guides have to make sure that you get back on track with your mission. And your mission is simply to remember that you're a multidimensional being of frequency that doesn't get heavily involved with physical form. You don't get heavily involved with physical form. As a multidimensional being of frequency, you get involved with energy, and those energies serve you because they want to reciprocate that you've served them. And then they surprise you and dazzle you with all these unexpected surprises in physical form. So whenever you start to focus on a person, a place, or a thing, incessantly, like repeatedly, over and over and over again, let that be an indicator to you that you're not in harmonic alignment with the multidimensional being that you are. And your guides don't care about what you want, because it's not really what you want. What you wanted was to remember who you are. What you wanted was to become a guardian of the galaxy. With great power comes great responsibility, which really just means the higher you climb, the more aspects that you can protect and shroud in love, the more the universe will entrust you to carry out more missions. And then you can snap your fingers, boom. The whole universe is at your fingertips. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But you don't have an attachment to the form. So remember, you are here to recollect, to remember everything that got fragmented. You have to remember it. You have to remember. It's like a dismembered body, but you have to remember all of your different bodies, all of your different aspects, in order to vibrate yourself into a more expanded state of consciousness. The more expanded your state of consciousness, the more dimensional access. The more dimensional access, the more light you're holding, and then you are given more. That's how it works. So It's all about being a guardian of the galaxy. All right. And again, there are levels to this. There's even a level where it's like, and I'm talking about really high levels, right? Levels where it's like, Phil, don't even do a video tonight, or Phil, don't even mention what your friend did, because other people might go look for the friends that you have and try to figure out who it is. But that's where you have to pick your battles. That's where you go, but if I do nothing at all, then I'm not going to be able to be of service tonight. And so you have to pick your battles. But how can I explain this? Your guides will always give you clearance when it's okay. They will always give you clearance when it's okay to say something. Like if I did a reading for Trump right now, there would be things that I could say that I would say to his face as well, and things that I wouldn't be able to say because it's too deep. And it's too deep. It doesn't have to be Trump, Biden, whoever. It's too deep. And in that soup of oneness, we have an agreement that they'll figure it out, right? In this life, I'm a nobody to them. But when you go into the higher echelons, it's a whole different game, my friends. There are sorcerers of light, there are the wizards, there are the extra dimensionals. So this third dimensional reality, you might think you're nobody, but you might actually be a guardian of the galaxy, and you are part of a council that decides what happens and where people go next. So it's very complex. I love you guys so much, and I know this was very random, but I just wanted to get the ball rolling again tonight because I missed you guys, and I wasn't sure what I'd talk about, and I still don't know what I talked about, but it's all good. I'm just asking you to be a guardian of the galaxy. Pay attention to who you badmouth. Pay attention to who you name call. It's not just about names. Pay attention to where there's a charge, like a negative charge behind what you do. Or next time you go for a coffee with a friend and you want to talk about something, ask yourself, why do I want to talk about this? If it's something that you've already transcended, then you could talk about anything you want because you become an ancient one. And the ancient ones come together. They could talk about people, they could talk about things, but they never put those people in a box. They let it breathe like a fine wine. You let it breathe. You're actually bringing all these aspects to the surface to have coffee with them, to have tea with them. There's no ill will. There's no ill intent. All right? Thank you so much, you guys, for the donations. I love you so much. If you'd like to donate, I highly appreciate it. feelgoodlife.com/donate. feelgoodlife.com/donate. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I will see you in another version of the Now.